So we finally got a new trailer for Final Fantasy XVI, and with summer 2023 fast approaching, I think it's pretty safe to say that we have plenty of reasons to be hyped. But as we wait for summer to arrive, I hope you'll join us as we keep fueling the hype train by directly analyzing some of the differences between the Japanese and the English versions of the new Final Fantasy XVI Ambition trailer. We'll start off just by playing the trailer with the official English subtitles at the top, the official Japanese subtitles below that, and then at the very bottom we will have a more direct translation of the Japanese dialogue for you to compare before I offer my own thoughts. But who am I? I'm Naoki from Birds of Play, and if you end up liking the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that we can prepare for the release of Final Fantasy XVI together. I think there are plenty of Japanese dialogue nuances and differences to discuss, but we'll talk about that after the trailer. I'll see you on the other side.
人が神に戦いを挑んで1500年。その罰によって死を迎えつつある世界。バリスゼア。
もうじき着く。まだ黒の一帯の中だぞ。こんなところに住むバカはいない。魔法も使えず草木も生えない土地にな。
黒の一帯が広がりゆく黄昏の時代に人々はマザークリスタルの加護を求めた。
人はクリスタルの加護なしに生きていけぬ。その加護を民に広めるのはお前だ、ジョシュア。
マザークリスタルを奪い合う5つの国家。慈悲と伝統の広告ロザリア。
こたびこそドレイク・ブレスを奪還する。
聖なる神の信徒ザンブレク。
もはや我らは風の大陸を手中にしたと言っても過言ではない。それすら夢ではなくなったわけだ。
砂人にそびえる共和国ダルメキア。
さてこれ席のお偉方、後先考えずに始めた戦の戦況には満足か。
信仰と恐怖が支配する鉄王国。
エーテルに毒された魂は清められねばならん。あれはジョーか、魂の救済。
灰の大陸の覇者ウォールード。
黒の一帯は刻々と大地を蝕む。マザークリスタルの周辺領域でしか国が立ち行かん。
かりそめの均衡もたった一つの火花から崩れ去るのだ。大陸歴860年。ザンブレクはロザリア公国へと侵攻。その夜、存在しないはずの召喚獣が権限したことでドミナントたちの運命が狂い始める。
ドミナントは宿した召喚獣の力を使うことができる。ただそれだけだろう。
兵器として生きることを強いられた。その先に待っているのが全身の石化、つまり死を意味するものだとしても、
一匹残らず首に殺してやる。
血の前に膝を折るがいい。
見せてみろ、本当の生とやらをな。
死んで償え。
因果に抗う者たちへ 審判の日が迫っていた。これが召喚獣大戦の始まりである。
That was a pretty nice trailer, right? At least it gives us plenty of stuff to talk about. So, starting with the very first sentence, we have some interesting differences between the English and the Japanese versions, as they reference the history of the world. The English version just mentioning the fall of humanity's forebears, while the Japanese version mentions that humanity had challenged the gods and that the subsequent sorry state of the world is a direct punishment for that act of transgression. This is reminiscent of the uprising against Ifrit in Final Fantasy XV, and we can almost bet our asses that the ancient technological civilization in the game was responsible for that, in true Final Fantasy fashion. Next, we have a more subtle difference as the terminology between the English and the Japanese versions differ a bit in places. In the Japanese version, the Blight is known as Kuro no Itai, or the Black Region or Zone. One reason this might be important is that it opens up some possible connections based on the word black. For example, in the Japanese version, the Dark Ifrit is known as Kuroki Ifrito, meaning the Black Ifrit, indicating a more direct connection between the summon and the state of the world in the form of the Black Regions. In the very next line, the Japanese version mentions that no one would be stupid enough to live in this region, perhaps foreshadowing that someone actually is stupid enough to live there, although that's of course just speculation. The Japanese version also mentions that you can't use magic there, which might give us a hint as to the relationship between people and magic in this world. Can people normally use magic in other places? And perhaps more importantly, will the player be able to use magic in these regions? What do you think? Tell us down in the comments below. We also have another line of dialogue which brings into question the relationship between people and magic. In the English version, Joshua's father tells him that the crystals work their magic through them, but in the Japanese version, he says that it is Joshua's duty to extend the divine protection of the crystals to the people. In Final Fantasy XV, magic was also harnessed through the crystal, but it was further filtered by the king, who then bestowed its powers to the members of the Kingsglaive and to the wall. Is something similar going on here? What do you think? Moving on, the Duke says something even more interesting, I think, as the Japanese version mentions retaking or recapturing Drake's breath as opposed to securing it. It's of course possible to read secure as retake, but in this case the Japanese version seems to be more specific, indicating that Drake's breath is currently controlled by another faction, no doubt the Iron Kingdom. Moving on to the nation of Sanbreque, the Japanese version makes me a bit curious, as it mentions the followers of the holy god or gods. I think it's especially interesting if we consider the opening line of the trailer and the battle with the gods. Since the Japanese version isn't specific about whether there is a singular god or gods in plural, we don't know who or what Sanbreque is really worshipping, but I wonder if it are the same gods or god mentioned in the beginning. What do you think? Share it with the rest of us down in the comments. Inside the throne room of Sanbreque, the Emperor in the Japanese version seems to think they already control Storm, or the Wind Continent, as it is known in the Japanese version. This potentially raises some questions about the state of the war. Is the Empire already in control, or are they moving in that direction, or is it somewhere in between? I guess we'll see next summer. Next we have Hugo, the Dominant of Titan, directly addressing the wise rulers in the Japanese version. This is important because it implies that they are actually in the room with him. This might be an important point a bit later in the trailer when he starts to lose his cool a bit. As the Empire invades Rosaria, we get another interesting difference in that the Japanese version clarifies that the shadow which rises is a summon which should not exist. So the Dark Ifrit, in this case, is something that should not exist. I guess we sort of already figured as much from the first trailer when the guy is surprised that there's another Aeon of Fire, but it's still interesting for someone to lay it out so plainly. And here's another very interesting difference, as the Japanese version mentions petrification or turning to stone instead of their bodies just being spent. Does this just apply to dominance, or can normal people also be petrified? Or perhaps more importantly, do we need to get the Supersoft ready? coming back to Hugo, we can see him start to lose his cool. The difference between the Japanese and the English version here, though, is that the English version just mentions Hugo wanting to crush and flay a single person. The Japanese version, however, has him saying that he won't leave a single one standing. So maybe he's talking about the leaders that are in the room. Lastly, I just want to mention this line by what I assume to be Jill, as he tells Barnabas, or perhaps someone else, if this is an example of trailer magic, cutting different things together, to kneel before tainted blood. This notion of tainted blood perhaps driving home the notion of the persecution of the dominants. But that's all for now. So what did you think of the trailer and the differences between the Japanese and the English versions? Let us know down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that we can prepare our bodies and souls for the release of Final Fantasy XVI together. But until next time, I can't wait for summer 2023.